Live.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Segal Talks here at the Martini Segal Theater Center, the Graduate Center at CUNY. And today is a very special day for us. And of course, all days have been inspiring. We had artists from Hong Kong, China, Italy, Germany, from Taiwan yesterday, from Italy, and so many others. Taylor Mack and Kristen Martin from New York for that great Trickle Up NYC.org website where you can subscribe on a kind of a Netflix-based service to support artists. And we heard from really from people around the world, from Egypt, from Lebanon. But today we have the enchanting and beautiful and wonderful Meredith Monk with us, one of the shamans like she and Patti Smith and others who are like really the who represent New York City, the spirit of New York, like really nobody else. And they are leaders in our field. Their work is astonishing, groundbreaking, remained vibrant and alive over all the decades. And she has been a good friend to the Segal, has been with us. We ran into each other at the Nomad, at the Great Nomad Library Cafe just a couple of weeks ago, and nobody thought of what would be now. So the Segal Talks are trying to create some meaning, to know what's on people's minds and what they are thinking. We hear from politicians, economists, virologists, but I think, and I feel strongly, we need to hear from artists. This is what it's all about. And since we can produce, we in our homes, we need a place to reflect the outside world, a stranger than fiction. And well, we all were wondering, is cyberspace real or not? Now it's one of the few real things that do exist and how we can connect. So first of all, Meredith, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
You're so welcome. I was saying to Jackie earlier that, you know, it's so hard to figure out what we can give now as artists in this world. And, you know, I can't be in a hospital helping. So how can we give in this time and in our world? So I feel like making contact with people is something that I can give. Thank
you, Meredith. So Meredith, how are you?
Hanging in. Some days better than others, but you know, some days I feel that I'm just drowning in sorrow. I work and people that I know dying and people that I know having the virus, and then so that comes up, and then I just try to acknowledge it and let it flow through. And then there's some days where I feel very inspired and I'm working on a new piece, and you know, the days that I can center myself and do that, I really feel that, you know, this is what I'm meant to do. You know, it's sometimes, I think I've talked to a lot of people that, you know, the kind of distracted quality that we're all going through in a way, it's hard to keep the discipline. And yet every time I start working, I just feel that the joy and of discovery and creativity is the meaning of it. You know, like this world, you know, will it really mean anything? You know, when we pass through this time, but I think the meaning of it is the joy of creativity and discovery, and that's meaning enough.
So do you discover,
Yeah, I'm some days where I'm working, as I said, on a new piece, and so I'm at the piano and or working on ideas, and yes, I think that it is coming along little by little.
For how long have you been personally? How have you been inside your loft?
It's been 3.5 weeks.
So 3.5 weeks. You have only leave once a week or once a day. What do you do?
Well, I've gone to the mailbox twice down the street. First time I just went to the mailbox and back. I had to send in my rent check and in bills and everything. And so that was a very strange day because it was a cloudy and cold day, and really was like a ghost town. There was nobody on the street except for one mailman, and he was about half a block away, and I yelled, "Thank you for your service," and then he didn't even look at me. He was waiting on it. And I realized this is going to really be quite an adjustment when we speak to each other face to face. You know, there'll probably still be a little bit of fear and discomfort, you know, along with the exhilaration of being able to be close to people again. So that was sobering. And then the second time I went out was on Saturday, again, to go to the mailbox. And I allowed myself to walk around the block, and there were many people out there. So it was a beautiful day. So again, I think that made me feel good that people were out. But at the same time, I think in New York, we have to be very careful about density of human beings.
I see. Yeah. So, like as like good New Yorker, you don't have a mailbox in your building. You go out to the post office to get your mail.
Well, I didn't go to the post office. That would be risky.
No.
No, mailbox. No, we get our mail in the building, but if you need to mail out your rent check, you have to go to the mailbox. Yeah.
Oh, you have to go to the mailbox and bring
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it. So, Meredith, in your loft, you have been since 1972, right?
Yes. I have.
So, as you said, so have you ever spent such a long uninterrupted time there?
You mean in terms of not going out on the street at all? No, I never have.
You normally tour, you go out and you sing. So how does it impact you to be with your things and with your mind and with your imagination, but having less input from the outside world, as we all experience now? What does it do to you?
Well, I love solitude, and I even, I spend a lot of time in New Mexico where I'm really, really in what I would call retreat. So first I thought that was going to be my long waited for retreat when this started. And I was really, really, really busy this whole fall and winter. It was kind of nonstop touring and doing. So I actually thought this was going to be a retreat time. And I realized that it's not quite, because I think part of the beauty of this time is that we're making more contact with people, even if it's virtual contact. That's very much part of, and I've never been afraid to be alone. I love my solitude. So it's now I realize that I have a kind of schedule. And so I have to really make time where I say this whole day is going to be a day of silence and meditation and working at the piano. So I literally have to still really discipline myself to make those days that I am not going to make contact with the outside world, because I love that concentration to reach out.
To reach out, yeah. There is a difference between, of course, solitude and loneliness. But do you feel lonely at times?
No. I love my solitude.
Yeah.
I did have one evening. It wasn't loneliness exactly, but before the lockdown in New York, I guess I was more, I don't know if I was in denial or I was more optimistic or out of contact. I don't know what, but I was really, I'm a Buddhist practitioner, so I was really working with fearlessness and blah, 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 all these principles. And then I got an email from my friend Ping Chong, and he said, there's going to be lockdown and the National Guard's coming in. And then it suddenly hit me. I'm totally alone in this loft. And here I am stuck in New York. And if I were ill, perhaps because of my age, I would just not be given the breathing mechanism. It's sort of, everything falls away. So actually a few days before that, all our engagements fell away. So it was this really feeling of suspension and groundedness that as Buddhist practitioners, we actually try for. And I feel like up to this time, that concept was rather abstract for me. And now I actually feel that we're living that in groundlessness, impermanence, emptiness, emptiness in the sense of everything changing and flowing. So that evening, I just had a kind of meltdown of real fear and, my mind going into all kinds of scenarios of doom, sadness that maybe this piece would never come to life, sadness that maybe I'd never perform again, just the whole scenario. And then I realized that I was very grateful that I went through that, because it really gives me much more the sense of compassion for anybody has fear and is, scared. And I moved through it. I saw how our minds shift. It's like that could come up maybe in moments, and then it shifts to something else. And we all are part of this big flow of life. And so I'm glad that I went through that, so, but other than that, I really don't feel lonely, at all.
So how does your day look like? You said you have a schedule or not, but tell us, what do you get up? Where do you go? Walk us through your day.
I'll tell you the ideal day. It doesn't work out that way all the time. So the ideal day is I get up, and then I do, if I'm really together, I sit and meditate for about half an hour, have my breakfast, and then I'll go and go to the piano and work. Maybe first I'll vocalize a little bit and do some physical exercises, and then go to the piano and work. And then after that, talk to people and find out how they're doing, answer emails, that kind of thing. I've been very fortunate that, so over the years, I've done a wonderful practice, which I think everybody who's done this would acknowledge that it's a wonderful thing physically, which is Pilates. I've done that for many, many, many years. And I have a wonderful teacher. So I've literally been taking private lessons with her twice a week here in my loft. And then she teaches one class a week. And that just getting moving and feeling my, strength and flexibility has also really centered me and helped me a lot in this time. And then vocalizing as well. So doing physical work of just trying to stay healthy with the instrument has been very helpful.
So then you have afternoon is communication and dinner, and then do you listen to music? Do you watch movies? Yeah, read movies. Tell me, what did you see last?
I'm a total movie freak. I finally saw Pichote, which is a classic Brazilian film from 1980. I've been wanting to see it for years, and I'm haunted by it. It's a beautiful film. So I really love film and film history. And so, and I just joined the Criterion channel, which
I did too.
Like, as I wrote to Ping, I said, it's like a feast for a starving person, because I don't even know where to begin. There's so many things I want to look at. So, I'm a real fan of Japanese film, particularly some of the more obscure early films of some of the Japanese directors. So they have some of those. And so I'm just thrilled. I mean, my big inspiration is film.
It's film. Yeah, it's a great service. I think it's also like Netflix, $10. It's criterionchannel.com. But I'm interested in your Buddhist practice and what you do, and maybe join a bit. Let us know the meditation. How do you do that? And you already went, but did it change? Did the meaning for it change for you in these days?
You mean during these days?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I, have a much more regular practice now because of this time. And that I'm very grateful for that. Usually when I'm in New York, sometimes I'm just running around so much I can't sit as much as I like to. So in that way, I am extremely grateful. And it's hard to talk about these things, but it's just a very simple meditation practice, which is the breath, going back to the breath. And there are many different variations. And then I've been doing a practice that I received a long time ago, which is the Medicine Buddha practice. And that's more a chanting practice of just sending out energy for healing of the world. And it's in Tibetan. And, that's challenging and has been challenging to me. But I think the point is the aspiration that you're, even by chanting these, these syllables, this text, it's, the idea is just sending out energy, healing energy to the world. And I think the basic philosophy is, we all have to just start working with ourselves in any way that we can. And then by doing that and being more aware of our proclivities or our, or just being more familiar with our minds, by working on ourselves, it's really like throwing a stone into the water and then it starts radiating out. You're not sure of how that's working, but that's not the point. The point is you have to begin by learning how to be friendly with yourself before you can really, be genuinely friendly with other people. So, and that's easier said than done. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just,
true.
just trying to stay centered and connecting.
So in the mornings you sit on a
Sorry.
you sit on a cushion and
I
you
sit on a little stool because I have my back.
mhm.
I have back problems, and
And then you breathe, and then
hmm
afterwards you do think. I remember when you came to the Segal and we talked, I often think about it. You said, don't be afraid of the unknown.
Well,
This was one
that's
of
what
your
we're living
sentences.
now. That I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's the thing that is amazing. And that's a principle, because what I think is that we always are living in the unknown, and we're always groundless, and we're always uh, groundless, not knowing what's going to happen next, and in the sense of change. And yet we're so busy that we're not aware of it. In other words, what I'm saying is this time is just magnifying the truth of what our reality is. Because in fact, any time in your life, you don't know that you could be walking out on the street and a cab could hit you. I actually know someone that happened to, and she died. So in a way, we're just living in a very, very magnified way, what we're always living, but we're just not aware of it, because we're going a little faster in the reality of our obligations, our, what we do and everything. So in that way, it's really amazing. It's an amazing time.
Do you think we should be afraid now a little bit, or you would still say don't be afraid?
I think it's more just using fear in a positive way of being more alert and being more careful, and not dwelling in it, but letting it come and acknowledging that energy of it, and the way that it wakes you up a little bit. And that's a natural thing, or natural response to what's happening, but to just try not to spin around in it and dwell in it, because I think that energy is not useful right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is devastating in New York. New York City has more deaths and more cases, as a state than most countries in the world, or all of the countries in the world at the moment. And I spoke with Melanie Joseph yesterday, who was so devastated. Of course, next to Byrne, our great champion, got out of the race, but also what is happening. We have 5 to 6 million people using a subway daily. We have, of course, one of the biggest airports, and of course, New Yorkers are so close. So, of course, everything that makes New York so great now, in a way, works also against it. Yesterday, Taiwan, it said how great they responded. It's an island nation, but they really prepared also in a way. But it is really scary there, and Ben has almost like an end of times feeling. How is this for you? You mentioned friends who are sick, or your family. Tell us a little bit about your personal situation with your community.
Is fine so far. They live all over the place. My niece, Karina, right when the beginning of this started, she went with her family and her husband upstate to some friends, thinking that they were just going to get their bearings for the weekend. And they ended up staying there, which is really great. And the rest of my family is living in different places, so they're doing well. There's 2 members of my ensemble that are ill, but they are hanging in.
They are infected?
Yes.
Who are they?
I don't want to mention their names.
Yeah. Okay, sure. But the dancers or
one dancer,
singers?
singer dancer, and 2 singer dancers. And then my assistant also had it early on. And so I was exposed to 3 people, but it's been 3.5 weeks since I've seen any of them. And so far, so good. And so, I'm just very grateful that even though I was exposed, I think by that point we were washing hands and we weren't standing too close, but I feel okay. And they seem to be improving.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that for your collaborators, and also for you, that in a way, as you said, what will I ever sing again? If something becomes very real, something we often think about, when does it end? And we often do say, when I die, or if I die, but we will, so, and this, of course, is a reminder, that, as you said, we do not know what happens next day in the normal days, will we wake up or not. So the question is, what do you think about making art now, and should we think about it? Is your thinking changing? I feel you maybe is one who have always had that dialogue already in the normal days, but is something changing in your internal hard drive on the computer? Is a little update running?
Well, I've had my days during this time that I start to lose heart a little bit, and wondering, what the meaning of making art is. And again, when we come through the end of this, will live art, which is something that I, really, really believe in, the power of live art, that we are all in the same room at the same time. Infinity sign of back and forth. I still believe in that deeply. And I'm working on a new piece called Indra's Net, which is based on a Hindu/Buddhist legend, kind of, I guess you would call it a teaching legend about connection and interdependence. And it's and I've been working on it, thinking about it for 10 years. And then I started working on the music in 2014, and then made cellular songs, which really felt like it needed to come to fruition earlier, because Indra's Net is such a huge idea. And I'm working on it, and I had during this time I've been teaching at Harvard, so you should know that I do once a week. On Mondays I teach a music composition class and a choral music class of young undergraduates that are learning my music. So I'm teaching with Katie Geisinger from my ensemble. We work together, and the composition class I called interdisciplinary composition. So it's graduate composers, but I'm also introducing them to visual ideas or ways to just open up their idea of making music, and just introducing other perceptual modes to them. And so it's been really amazing, to do it on Zoom and see all those beautiful faces in this grid, and then trying to figure out problems that they could, compositional assignments that they could fulfill. Some frustration involved with that, but it's also pretty interesting, to figure that out. So that, and then part of the Harvard residency for me was just so blessed, and such a wonderful, wonderful thing, was that they allowed me to work with my whole ensemble on this new piece for a week in February at Art Lab, which is a new, beautiful building that Harvard has opened up. I mean, just couldn't be better. And I had 1 week with my ensemble working on Indra's Net. And last fall, I had worked with students at Mills College, because that's going to be where the piece is going to be performed first. They were instrumentalists. So this piece has 8 singer, actor, dancers, and I think 16 orchestra players. So at last fall, I was able to work with the instrumentalists at Mills, and then had this wonderful week with. That was incredible, incredible beginning. So no, not being able to do that again, we were supposed to do it this week, as a matter of fact. That was pretty sad, so that was part of this thing of, how do I keep this going? How do I keep the inspiration going? Is this meaningful? Because the piece is so much descriptive. It's, strangely enough, is so descriptive of what we're going through now, because Indra's Net, the concept of Indra's Net is, the story is that there was an enlightened king, and he lived on this mountain, and he made a net that covered the whole universe. And at each intersection of the lines of the net was an infinitely faceted jewel, which reflected everything else in the universe. So every corner of that net is an infinitely faceted jewel that reflects all the other infinitely faceted jewels in the universe. So it's really the concept of interdependence and connection. And my idea was so spatial, because part of it is going to be an installation piece where people can walk through it, and there are these points in the space. And I even in the live part of it, I want to have the audience in different configurations during the piece. So, the live thing seems really important. I don't know if I can conceive of a virtual way of thinking about it at this point. So I just feel that I just at a certain point had to this is very reflective of what we're going through right now. It's a kind of prayer to the continuation of the earth. There are some sections that really have a sense of prayer and healing, and I feel that it's something that could be very hopefully healing to people even when this is over.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
really
so
do.
then I go back to the piano and start working again, and I'm finding new ideas. And in other words, I'm saying that we're just continuing on the process with the faith that it will come to life in the way that it needs to come to life. Yesterday, I had a wonderful Zoom talk with my costume designer, but also real artistic soulmate Yoshio Yabara, who's I've been working with since the 1980. And we do a lot of conceptual thinking things through, also spatially, because he's also a scenic designer. So we had a talk, and we are starting to work on thinking about the costumes and just taking it step by step, with also knowing that the process itself is meaningful.
Mm-hmm. I know you spent also some time on restoring the film of Quarry, and it was also a look back at your work, and about something that in a way is lost, that legendary time in New York City when it was being produced, when you found and created something and discovered also something. When you looked at it again, even before this, what came to your mind? What were you thinking about? Also about the city of New York, the tremendous changes we went through, and this also will transform the city. But what came to your mind with the film, and do you see new connections with the time now?
I think it's interesting that your response, even when we did the showing, was more about the time that it was made and the community that we had at that time. But I don't actually. Strangely enough, that's not the first thing that comes to mind when I look at the film. I guess what really shocked me about looking at it is how prescient it was and how it's so much about what's going on in this world. So, I think of it more in those terms. And then also how amazing each of the performers was in that film, such brilliant artists, and how they were so unique and inspired, and just a way of thinking about things. So maybe that has a little bit to do what you're talking about. There were a lot of principles that maybe we knew as a language of perception and performing that have probably changed now. For example, Quarry it was done originally at the La Mama Annex, which is a huge 100-foot long, I keep on putting my water down, but sorry.
Mm-hmm.
A huge 100-foot long space and 50-foot wide space with two, wooden, it's like scaffold. And my idea was to have the audience, in a sense, be the set, that you actually were, you saw this crowd of people across from you. And yet it had, so the space has a kind of epic quality, and yet you're very close to the performers. So the performing style had a lot to do with very not projecting, but just being in it centered, neither projecting or pulling energy in, but just literally being there, because some of the audience was seeing you very close. And yet a filmmaker, director, mentality, composer, I loved that the audience was looking down at the piece, because I wanted the airplane view of the piece, and that you could see this gigantic space in some of the sections, and then yet there were some sections that were very intimate. So, in that sense, it was like long shot and close up within one piece. So, that live situation was very important to the piece.
What do you think about New York City in general now? Did it over the years, decades change? Do you feel it is that? How do you experience it?
Well, I think that what we did have in the 70s and the 60s, late 60s and 70s was a sense of community. You know, we really, of all the arts, you know, because there weren't so many of us. So there was you know, what we call the downtown world. And that was people from across the board in terms of art forms, trying to push past the boundaries of those art forms. And there was a lot of communication between artists of you know, of different art forms. So that was a beautiful time. And then I think things changed a little bit in the 80s because of the political situation, that it became a little bit more business-like, and people were thinking more about making money. I think when we came to do art in those 60s and 70s, I mean, we did it for the love of it. And you know, we were able to survive on very little and doing other jobs, and we were doing our work for the love of it, not thinking that was going to be the way of earning a living. And then the 80s came, and then the money thing came in, and you know, the commodification of art came in strongly, and so that shifted a little bit. And then, you know, through the 80s and the 90s, and now I feel that we're back to square one in a good way. That the young people that I know, they're the love of making and the love of discovering and the love of creating. And the only thing that I think is more challenging now is that it's harder to earn a living. So people, you know, when I came to New York, people were living in tenement apartments that cost $75 a month, and you could live alone, which you know, really, is very helpful on one level. Now I think young people are living more in groups, and sometimes that's a beautiful thing, like, you know, almost cooperatives, you know, to be able to survive. So that's very different, but it's pretty spread out. I think there's a sense of it being quite spread out. So knowing what the whole community is a little bit more difficult to, you know, to get your hands on. You know, it's pretty spread out in many ways. So I think that's different.
Do you think New York?
I'm sorry.
It will be. Do you think it will be a rapture, a disruption for New York City? Will life be different after Corona? Will it maybe go back to a community, or do you think it will be just a pause button and will be the same way as it was before? What do you?
Oh, I don't think it can be the same, and I do feel that people are really, there's such an acknowledgement of the love and care of people for each other now, you know, and what we've meant to each other over the years, and the young people, what they mean to us. And I don't know, to me, it will never go back to what it was before, and maybe for the better, because I think value system wise, we were really going really down a bad path of, you know, you know what this, I hardly have to say this, but, you know, of greed, of violence, of polarization, of hatred. I mean, it was just pathetic, you know, on a certain level. So I feel that hopefully this will bring people to their senses on us, you know, and that we have a start, you know, that would be my big hope, and start going back to what's really important in this world. But I was going to say, you know, so I'm on West Broadway now, and when I first moved here, this was a very obscure neighborhood. There were just one Teddy's restaurant, one coffee shop, and 3 artists here, and some spice factories. It was like a very industrial area. So that haunted quality of old New York, you know, was very prevalent. And now it's Tribeca. So, you know, it's very, you know,
Yeah.
But my other loft that I lived in before I moved here was on Great Jones Street. And I remember Broadway at that time. So that's like 3rd Street or Great Jones Street for people that don't know New York that well. You know, there were hardly even light bulbs on Broadway in those days. There was nothing. I mean, it was like completely dark, empty. People were living in lofts, you know, like, and they were factories. And now sometimes if I am going down Broadway, I don't even know where I am. It's like, you know, it's sort of like James Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. You know, what happened to Tom's drugstore? You know, now it's a you know, a gambling casino. I mean, it is so crazy, you know, with all these stores and you know, lights and everything. And so that is just, again, the natural principle of everything changes. but sometimes it's really hard to, identify with it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the world really did change so dramatically, and especially for you who lived it, also in a way shaped it. We are, in a way, the world got smaller. We are connected so fast, and through Zoom and Skype and internet and email, radical changes.
Yeah, that I think is a really positive thing. Like, the boundaries between nations are melting if we stay with this, that the medical profession, they're communicating, and everybody is trying to solve this problem. Truce in Yemen now, amazing things are there's in South Africa, the drug dealers are now delivering food and medications to people rather than drugs. I mean, there's such a possibility that's coming up. And and I guess my prayer would just be that we don't go back to where we started, and just that all this other impulse, of human nature begins again. I hope that we just can keep some of these ideas, because we're working, we're literally, the boundaries between all of us on the whole planet are melting, and we're just tiny specks on this planet, and just to think in those terms that we're so connected to each other, and just the survival of the planet. I've just been starting to read Joanna Macy's work. She's an extraordinary environmental activist and also Buddhist practitioner. She's, if anybody out there can just get any of her writing, it's just amazing. And, she said, it's like meditation on your feet. It's like, it's one thing to be sitting, but it's the other thing is that you're getting your hands in the dirt, and you're really working on something. I actually even have a piece in Internet that's called Hands in the Dirt Song.
Yeah, no, that is important. Yeah, one of the artists from Taiwan yesterday said the first time the world is really connected. It's invisible, but we are now in the history of mankind. He said, but going back to the world that got smaller, but also it got smaller in a way that we are in our own small spaces. So in a way, it's this paradox that globally it got smaller, even though it's far away, but now we are in small spaces and are far away from the normal life we are in. So you suggested that a bit earlier. Maybe could we have a little look at your small space, at your life, at the
mine is pretty big. Mine is pretty big.
Your big West Broadway life. Could we get through the apartment, a little walk? And
sure. I mean, that's, I had to get over being very upset that I couldn't go to New Mexico, which is my kind of soul place. But then I sort of worked my way through that, and now I just wake up thinking how blessed I am that this space is so big and airy and open, and I'm so fortunate. So I'll take you on a little tour. Let me know if you can see this. So
since 1972.
Yes. And a lot of people are saying it's like a museum, which it probably is, because I guess people aren't working. So this is one little shrine. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So I have these little shrines. So these
are friends and artists or on the shrine?
No, this is my teacher, and then also people that have died, and a Buddha, and it's just like a little shrine. And then I'm going through the living room here, and then this is going towards the window. I'm going to back around, but I wanted to show you my turtle. And I can, let's see, see if I can manage with this crazy thing. Can you see this little cage?
Yeah.
And can you see her?
Yeah. What's her name?
Neutron.
So, hi, my name's Neutron, but that Meredith, she's had me for 42 years, but I don't even know who she is after all this time.
A little bit higher so we can see her face. Yeah. Oh, there she is. Yeah. Oh my God. For 42 years?
Oh yes, she's been my mommy for 42 years, but I don't even know if I can recognize her because I only have a little brain.
I see. And so do you look out on the street of New York from your aquarium?
She does sometimes.
Can you give for our viewers from outside maybe a little look on the streets?
Sure.
And the industrial rubber products sign, which you have there. So what street are we looking at here?
I'm on West Broadway, and we're the street that's catty corner to us is White.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we lost your audio for a moment. So this is Great Jones? No, West Broadway and
No, I'm on West Broadway, and we're looking at White Street.
White Street. Great,
Yeah.
great. Amazing. So as you can see, it is empty. A few people there, and
Notice the
piece of
rainbow
plastic
flag.
floating.
Notice the rainbow flag on White Street, White Street
Yeah.
Restaurant. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Incredible.
now I'm going to
So let's get back in your apartment.
So here's we're walking down, through the living room, and here we're going into the kitchen. I'll turn on the light. Here's a kitchen, bathroom in kitchen, bathtub. You see
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a beautiful
kitchen,
Victorian bathtub. Yeah.
Yeah, bathtub in kitchen. And now this is the special place. This is the studio.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful.
And this is my piano.
So every day, that's where you rehearse, where you discover, where you...
This is where I work alone, but this is also where we rehearse the ensemble. And there's been many, many pieces that have been born here. Quarry was born in this space. I mean, many.
What year was Quarry? Was it in 76? 76, yeah.
This is where I sleep.
So you sleep in your studio, in the place. You dream where all your works were born.
Yup. My family on pictures. And this is another keyboard one, we were going to be performing with Bang on the Can All Stars in their marathon, and we were going to use this keyboard rather than a piano. And that's John Hollenbeck's drums. We were going to be doing a duet at the Big Ears Festival, and that was also canceled. And here's another shrine. Can you see that?
Yeah. Maybe if you go a little bit lower with the camera and we don't see the window.
Tell me, because I can't.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's good. Yeah, a beautiful shrine. So you really think of your friends and collaborators and family.
In the Chinese tradition, ancestor shrine. So some of the people have died that are here, but then, some people are alive, like the Dalai Lama. And this is the Medicine Buddha shrine.
What is that, a Medicine Buddha shrine?
Well, this is all like, kind of metaphoric. So here's a mirror. It's just more a kind of energy. And then it's, what would I say? It's manifest in a figure, but the figure is not, it's just a manifestation of a certain energy and aspiration. So when you do that chanting, it's really more just invoking the energy of healing. Yeah,
that's amazing. I have a hard time not asking you to chant or to sing, but I know we can't do that here, but maybe one day. And so what
I wanted to show you,
to show
you a little bit of artwork so this is a beautiful piece by Anne Hamilton. And I wanted to show you a beautiful photograph that I love by Clemens Kalischer, so that is a photograph that he took in 1947 of displaced persons. He died recently. He was a very, very brilliant photographer, one of the best.
Beautiful photo, so much love in that.
So are we still on? Are we still on?
Yes, we are still on.
I've lost the image.
Yeah,
okay,
maybe you have to go. Yeah, you're back. And in the back is the kimono you have there.
Yes. Oh, I can show you that. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So that came from Suzuki, the wonderful Japanese director. We performed Education of the Girl Child in the 80s at his Togamura festival in northern Japan. And everybody who participated in that festival, he gave us, that's a performance kimono.
Performance kimono, wonderful. Well, it's a good thing to have, and also in front of you, and to think. We got some questions here for our Segal Talks. One is from Alan Fisher, who says, "I admire Meredith's work for so many decades, and I've been lucky as an artist to work with her over the years. My question: how important is it to be daily informed, especially in these troubled times, or better as an artist to separate and envision a better world?"
I think I'm trying for a balance now. I'm not getting 100% caught up. And I feel like it is important to know, to not forget what's going on, but I'm trying to balance that and not just get obsessed by it. And then, really give myself time to go into my imagination and just try to work on alternatives. And I'm just sending my love to Ellen Fisher, who is one of the most beautiful performers alive today.
Thank you. We have here a message from Noé Couillard, who said, "Dear Meredith, thank you for your continued transformative work. What is your response to the possibility of a more persuasive, mediated interaction between people through screens as a result of this pandemic? Is it possible to transfer that kind of unmediated presence your work has so potentially, so greatly carried out through that years? Do you feel there is a presence possible?"
I'm struggling with that right now. As I said earlier, I've always believed so strongly in the live presence and the live performance as a form that, short of being in a church or, that kind of gathering, it has that possibility of the live energies. So I'm a little bit, because I'm just trying to figure that out. I don't know. That's something I'm struggling with right now. Even knowing a number of years ago that maybe live performance was like a dinosaur. I always say, sometimes I feel like a dinosaur because everybody's so screen oriented. I still would want to affirm live performance, because I think that it's something that's, you just cannot substitute the screen for what happens on, in live performance. But I feel like right now I'm just trying to contend with what happens if we don't have a live performance. I mean, I'm struggling with it. No.
Yeah, I think for a while there was a question within the Catholic Church, and if the Pope's blessing will work if you see it through television, or if you had to be on St. Peter's Square. And
Wow.
the church had a big council with all their cardinals and whatever, but they came up with a solution that you have to be there in person, but if you're too sick or you can't by any way get there, even if you wanted to, it does count. So it's perhaps a little guideline to think about it. And of course, I do think the screens actually create even more beauty for a live presence. Like books are so precious and great now because we read so many electronic mails and things, which is great. We can write letters, we can write emails, we can write Instagrams. I'll be really writing a letter now means so much more. It's great to read books, and I think performances live, embodied on stage, will even be more significant. But yes, also for that new generation, these children of the digital age, as we say it here at the Segal, in variation of Brecht's dictum of the his theater for the children of the technological age. Yes, there will be also new forms that will exist next to each other, and perhaps we can learn from Japan, where they say, yes, we have Buto, we have No, very old, and something very new next to each other, and in 200 years Buto will be an old tradition, but something new will come up. Here's another question from London, from Jonathan Petter, and he says he was in one of your voice workshops last year,
All
the
my
Omega
pals
Institute.
are asking questions. All my
Yeah,
pals
and your friends, good. Maybe they want to connect to you, and this is your way of, giving something. As you said, it's important to hear voices from the artists and from you in the times of Corona we live in. She said, I wonder if you could say a little more, even you said already about it, about the arc of meditation practice over your life. So the arc and how it has impacted your creative practice, also your meditation. How significant is it, and would you suggest that artists should do that?
Well, I think as a young artist, I intuitively was drawn to some of the principles that I learned later on were actually basic principles of Buddhism. So
what principles? Yeah.
Well, space, fluidity of time and space, presence, immediacy, stillness, silence. I think that those were part of my aesthetic. And when I was a young person, I think my art was everything. I don't know if there would have been space for meditation, and certainly there was not a lot of space for developing myself as a human being. So, I was pretty obsessed. But at a certain point in my life, quite a difficult point in my life personally, I had been introduced to Buddhism because I was teaching at Naropa Institute in the mid-70s. So, and I had always been a searcher, always a seeker. And the talks of Trungpa Rinpoche, who was the teacher that started Naropa Institute, it's now Naropa University. I went to all his talks, and and they were amazing, but I wasn't ready at that time for like an organized anything, and I was skeptical and blah blah blah, But then 10 years later, I was going through a hard period in my life and started reading some of his writing. Really applied to the suffering that I was going through. And so I started doing a real practice. And, and I remember some people saying, because the Western tradition has this myth that the more neurotic you are, the better artist you are, as in cut off your own ear, kind of, there's a tradition of the, that art comes from neurosis. And so to think of maybe giving that up, doing practice, maybe I'd get all cleaned up and I wouldn't be able to do my art. But that is so not what practice is. Practice is actually going right to those hard places and leaning in on them and actually accepting them and working with them, like working with every aspect of yourself. So over the years, I think the only difference and influence that it's had on my work is, well, I would say that it's had more influence on me as a human being and being able to integrate my values as a human being and my values as an artist and not have this over here and that over there. That's been really wonderful. And also not being ashamed, to say that you're making work that's hopefully of benefit to sentient beings. It wasn't hip to say that like in the old days of the intellectual old days, because it was a very male dominated sensibility in the art world. Yeah. So I feel like it's just been, so it's fed my work in a lot of ways, but I didn't start there.
Yeah. Thank you. We're getting a bit closer to the end. I also know you have a call at 1, so we're going to shut down a little bit, only a couple of minutes. But we do ask our guests at the very end, what advice would you give to artists, young artists, but perhaps with you also for our listeners, or maybe for both. What would you say? How to stay awake in these times? What to do? How to use it? What to think about? Is there something you can, as a person, as Meredith?
I would just say, try to find the parts of your life that you really love, and and just affirm those parts of your life, of what you do. It could be anything, because I think that anything that comes from love, nursing, making art, teaching, anything that really that you love, it's so important to value that now. And then also you have a lot more to give to other people, and also at this time. So, and then I think it's finding a balance between what you need to do yourself and what you need to do in terms of giving to other people, and just try to know that we will get through this in one way or another, and also to not give up.
Mhm.
To really not give up. Yeah, I think that's what we all have to say. We're not going to give up.
You're not gonna
Just
give up.
keep on trucking. Keep on trucking.
And for a young artist, someone who's already, you think, should I really go in that career? It's so hard. And now the virus hits it. The next generation, the young generation, it will be more probably years of economic downturn, of complications, of problems. What is your advice to?
There
to
always
artists?
were, Frank. There always were. There always were. When we came to New York, I mean, it was so hard. So I feel that the young artists should just take the time right now to do their work, and to know that when this is over, they will find a way. I always say that to young people, my students: just follow your dream and don't let anybody tell you that you can't, because you will find your way. If you follow that, you're going to find your way. But if you don't follow that, you're always going to regret it. And that's very painful. I think now I would just say to young artists in this period of isolation to work, just try to work, try to just do the work and be curious, and start with no expectations whatsoever. And even in terms of making work, like really dive in with no expectation, no knowledge. It's beginner's mind. Beginner's mind has all possibilities. Expert's mind means that you think that you know something, but I think we all don't know anything. And so, we're all living in the unknown. We're all suspended, and those moments of suspension are daunting and sometimes scary. But what an amazing thing that you could have those moments of gap, of totally not knowing anything, of moving through your habitual patterns and behavior. I mean, what a great opportunity. So even if you have moments of that, it's worth it.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
hope
Thank
that's
you, Meredith.
helpful.
No, this is a serious and very significant advice, and I think you will have to know a lot to say that you don't know anything, and you certainly do know so much and have done so much. It's our great honor to have spent that time with you, and I hope we will learn from it. Someone said it is important to study history because you learn that people forget about history, and I'm with you. I hope that this will remind us of the history of the arts. This is the Greeks and the theater, and bringing people together, and that community is significant. And someone said it in our talks, I think, Valeria, that right now people are more important than the economy. They are more important than the production, because now it's about our lives. So it's something very essential what we are living through. We really don't know what it is. We will only see it when it comes to us in 10 and 20 years later in documentaries where everybody seems to know everything. But Meredith, thank you for giving us a view of your life, of your insights, and really, really, that was very moving and real and very honest. Thank you.
Thank you, and my love to everybody out there.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have the time tomorrow, please do tune in. We have Aristide Tanarg from Burkina Faso, a great writer-director who in Africa did amazing work, was also at the Segal, an actress also from there, and to hear what is going on. Next year we hear a little bit more from also New York City. We will hear from Big Dance Theater, from Nature Theater of Oklahoma, the Foundry Melanie, and Aaron Lensman. If it all works out, we will then hear from France, and then also from India, from Pakistan, Shahid Nadeem, and others. So I hope you will join us. So please all do stay safe, use your mask, and stay tuned. Thank you so much, and thanks to HowlRound for hosting us, Thea, VJ, the Segal team, May, and San Yang, and Jackie. So thank you, and I hope you will join in. And Meredith, I hope we didn't steal too much time from your.
Not at all.
Bye-bye. Thank you. And thank you to Kristen for helping to set it all up. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.